Lara is one of the co-founders and head chef at Veloforte. And Tom is very much the me at Veloforte, like content and like making cool stuff happen is again probably the easiest way of describing it.
Yes.
Over to you guys.
Yeah. So I mean, Charlie's pretty much covered everything. So essentially put this little call together to help educate and give you a bit of advice, I suppose, around your fueling needs. Obviously, the clocks have gone forwards now, so training is really starting to ramp up. And with those extra miles, those extra kilometers, the need for the correct fueling and the right fueling is ever more important. So effectively, we're going to be covering some fueling basics, from everything from what to eat to how much to eat, and the importance of electrolytes, and then open up the room for discussion if any of you have got any questions at the end. But hopefully we can cover pretty much everything within the next 45 minutes or so. So yeah, I think before we jump into how to fuel properly on the bike, Lara, I don't know if you could potentially explain why fueling is so important in the first place, in terms of performance, recovery, everything like that, just to sort of set the scene.
Absolutely. I'm not wanting to teach anybody how to suck eggs, but I'm going to start from the basics. So just to cover all the ground. So your body is like your engine. So you need to put all the good fuel in it to keep it going and to keep it smoothly running. So that you hear is so much in the news at the moment about protein, but as endurance athletes, we need to be focusing on carbohydrates to keep our legs spinning. The carbohydrates that we eat are transformed into glycogen in our muscles and our liver, and it's the glycogen that's released that allows you to keep your legs pushing hard and keeps your performance on point. So carbohydrates need to be your primary focus when you're looking at how to fuel these long endurance rides. If we're looking at a 360 approach to nutrition, then of course we have to include all of the macronutrients. You need your proteins, your fiber, your carbohydrate, and your healthy fats as well. But when you're fueling on the bike and in the run up to a long session, carbohydrate focusing is really important, because your body can only store about 60 to 90 minutes worth of full effort in your muscles and your glycogen store. No matter how well you've topped that up before your ride, if you are not replacing that as you're going, you will run out of energy. Your performance will massively suffer, and that's your mental and your physical performance as well. So topping up your energy as you go, making sure that your glycogen, your muscle stores are really high when you start, is the key to your best results.
That all makes a lot of sense. And I guess sort of moving on to the next point is common mistakes that lots of cyclists make. I know I've been guilty of it in the past, and I see when I'm out on group rides, people underestimating the amount of fuel that they need, or taking on fuel much later, too late into the ride when they start to feel hungry rather than the start. So I guess to start off with, are there any common mistakes you see in terms of fueling? How often should you be really fueling on the bike? And as a rough rule of thumb, is there a source of carbs per hour that people should be aiming for?
Yes, yes, there is. A lot of the problems we get with endurance riding is the failure to prepare. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So if you are not carrying the right fuel, if you haven't tested the right fuel in your training, if you haven't looked at your nutrition in the run up to your event, you're setting yourself up for a fall. So there are many techniques that you can address, which looks at your carbohydrate loading in the run up to an event and looks at your hydration in the run up to the event. They're the two major things that are going to keep you on track. And failure to do that will mean you're starting out at a lower ebb, and then you're constantly catching up the whole time. The other big thing is people leaving it way too long to start replenishing their fuel during as part of the ride. So it's too late. If you're waiting until you're feeling thirsty or you're feeling hungry, it's too late. You need to be setting yourself regular fueling intervals and keeping to those so that you can get to your carb target. Now, old age carb targets, they used to say 1 gram per kilogram an hour. So if you're 75 kilograms, that means you're aiming for 75 grams of carbohydrate an hour. Now there's a bit more flexibility. It's between 60 and 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour if you're riding more than 90 minutes. And all of your courses, Charlie and Charlotte, we know, are well more than 90 minutes. And so you absolutely have to be looking to hit those targets from the first hour. It's not in the second or third hour. It's making sure you're aiming for 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrates within that first hour. So that means start fueling at 20 minutes, 30 minutes in. You cannot absorb 60 to 90 grams of carbs efficiently in one hit. So drip feeding your energy in as you're riding is the best way to do that.
I was going to say, for me, what I found really useful that I've been doing over the last probably 2 or 3 years is most cycling computers nowadays, you can set reminders. So on mine, every 20 minutes, it just gives me a little reminder to eat and drink. And I think gravel cycling, especially when you're going down a descent or through a more technical section, it's so easy to lose track of time. And before you know it, it's gone to 20 minutes, it's gone to 30 minutes, and you've sort of missed the fueling slots in a way. And actually setting that reminder on my Wahoo is a really great way of making sure that I'm always fueling, like you said, little and often. Because yeah, that's done wonders rather than taking on a massive load of carbohydrates in one hit every 60 minutes. Drip feeding has been, yeah, really, really beneficial to my performance, I would say, over the last, couple of years.
Absolutely. And choosing fuel that have 2 types of carbohydrates, are called dual source or dual carb fuels. So within your gut system, I'm going to go a bit of biology now, you have glucose channels, glucose and fructose channels. And within your gut, you can absorb 60 grams of glucose an hour and 30 grams of fructose an hour. So that will give you your 90 grams full grams of carbohydrate an hour if you're making sure that you're taking fuel that has both glucose and fructose in it. Lots of standard gels are glucose only gels. The bigger trend coming through now is obviously to have the dual source fuels, the beta fuels of the world, the Veloforte fuels of the world, where you have glucose and fructose, which means you're not going to overload your gut. A lot of people suffer with gastric inflammation, cramping, sloshy guts, because they're perhaps taking on a single source of carbohydrate, just glucose, in too higher a concentration. And that can cause your gut to be flooded with fluid to try and offset the concentration gradient between your blood and what's happening inside your gut. So the way around that is to make sure that you're drip feeding the carbs in, give your body time to process them, get them through your gastric system and into your blood supply, so you're not creating this huge, great big carb load in your stomach and in your guts, which is going to cause all the problems.
Yeah, makes sense. And so obviously lots of people on this call are probably aware, like, there are multiple different types of fuel. So people probably gels, you've got chews, you've got energy bars. And I know personally each of those play a different role in my training and like sort of event day. I have personal preferences, but do you have any recommendations on when you should be prioritizing having energy bars over energy gels or energy chews? Should you be having a bit of a mix, or is there a particular time each of those sources sort of has the best benefits as such?
Yeah, so in a long day out, so let's start with energy bars. Energy bars tend to have a little bit more, well, obviously they're solid in nature. They need you to chew harder. They tend to have maybe a little bit of protein in them, some fiber in them. And so they're much better towards the beginning of your exercise session, the beginning of your ride. So you can use an energy bar if you haven't had time for breakfast. And certainly on the bastard ride, which starts at 5 a.m, not many of you will have had a lot of time for a good breakfast beforehand. You can absolutely munch on an energy bar, and the Veloforte energy bar is perfect before the start line. And then in those first few hours, when your gut is more receptive to taking on solids, than to have a solid type of fuel like an energy bar is a really good choice. The Veloforte energy bars have energy and low-level proteins in them as well. So when you're out for hours and hours on end, carbohydrates is your main energy source, but drip feeding in a little bit of protein from time to time is a great way to make sure that you're supporting your muscles on these long rides as well. So energy bars in the first quarter of your ride are a good choice. And then I would always suggest you then moving through the textures. So you're going from solids to semi-solids and into liquids the further you get into your ride. When you're riding hard, your body is diverting your blood to your muscles, and it's away from your gut. So the lower the resistance, the lower the fiber content of your food as you further you go into the race, the better you will digest. So you can start with more solids, bars, bananas, real food, and you can move into sort of energy chews and into energy gels, and then onto pull-on liquids towards the end of the race. And hydration, as I said before, is super important. You need to start that right from the beginning. So I would always suggest you have 2 bottles on your frame. Most people ride with 2 bottles anyway. One with water. Water is your hydration. It's what your fluids, it's what you're sweating out as you're riding along, and one with an electrolyte solution in. And you may choose to put a carb electrolyte solution in that second bottle, so you're adding to your carbohydrate intake, but making sure that you're also replacing your salts and your minerals that you're losing in your sweat as well. So 1 bottle of water, 1 bottle of electrolyte with carbs if you want to add it to those as well.
Yeah, that will make sense. And then I guess that's touching on fueling during the ride, and then post sort of ride recovery. I know lots of people here, like, as training starts to ramp up, DOMs and just the hours after exercise. I know I certainly feel it in the legs and the body after a hard training session. So are there any ways that people can help optimize their recovery from what to eat, when they should be eating this? Is there any stretching, foam rolling? Is there any routines, I suppose, that people can be implementing into their recovery that can really help them the days after, I suppose?
Absolutely. So there's 2 recovery windows in your time after you get off the bike. So you kicked your shoes into the corner. You may have a beer in your hand if you're at the stone circle. But before you have a beer, I would suggest you reach for a recovery product. So it could be a recovery shake, it could be a high protein and carb bar, because in the early recovery window, which is within the first hour, ideally within the first 30 minutes, your body is super receptive to take on carbohydrate, which is what you should be focusing on, and low-level protein in this early window. No matter how well you fueled on your bike ride, you'll probably come back in what we call the glycogen debt, which means you haven't quite managed to keep up with your energy targets. And so in that early recovery windows, when your body's most receptive and getting that energy back into your muscles, and the protein and carbohydrate in a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 carbohydrate to 1 protein, is the best formula to help you to restock your muscles. The protein in that early window is helping you to take on the carbohydrates into your muscle source. And then you've got your longer recovery window up to 4 hours, where you can really crack on with taking on more protein. And it's the protein that helps repair your muscle fibers that undoubtedly would have been stressed quite a lot on the gravel ride. So the early window is a recovery shake is a great idea. You will hopefully get to know our recovery shakes in Veloforte very well. We've got 2 here. One, we've got a vegan one and one with whey here. I'll come to you, Steve, in a minute. Or you can use a protein bar. So again, you'll get to know the Veloforte products, hopefully. And these products will really help to kickstart your recovery fueling there. What was your question, Steve? Well, if you really struggle eating and drinking up to an hour after a hard ride, it is hard. So that's why a shake, and one that you're going to enjoy and one that tastes really nice, is a great way to just sip away at it. You don't have to chuck it down. Getting something in is better than getting nothing in. So if you sip away at a recovery shake, that is the best solution for you. And it is hard. You often hear people say they have real problems feeling sick afterwards, and that may be because you either overfueled during your race and that you've just taken on a vast amount of carbohydrates that are just sitting like in a block in your stomach, or that you're on the edge of bonking and you're feeling sick and nauseous because of that. So if you've overfueled, if you've really maxed out your fueling, if you've gone 90, and lots of the pros are pushing it up to 120 grams of carbs an hour, they're only doing that because they've trained their gut. I would not suggest you do that on the Stone Circle rides. If you feel like you've ramped up your carbohydrate intake right to the max and you're feeling it's just sitting like a block in your stomach, the best thing you can do is just sip water and allow it to just pass through. And then once you're feeling more comfortable, head for your recovery bar, your recovery shake.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me personally, I find drinking so much easier than eating. Like I never fancy eating anything, whereas I normally have my recovery shake with water, which I know a lot of people say that's a bit disgusting. They refer of milk, but yeah, with water, it's so much lighter on the stomach and it's just a lot more palatable. I find, especially on a hot day. So like, I know, Lara, you mentioned the Vita and the Nova, the two Veloforte ones. So they got electrolytes in there as well.
They have, and really
hydration.
Absolutely. So so when you come off the bike, is carbohydrates and protein and fluids, because like I say, you're more than likely you need to be catching up on your hydration as well. It's very difficult to carry as much water as you need when you're out on these long rides. So
I think that sort of covers all the questions I have for fueling. So I know we just touched upon a bit about Veloforte there, but I guess most of the people here maybe not aware of Veloforte. I know there's so many nutrition brands out there in the world. So I don't know if you wanted to give just a quick overview on how Veloforte is different to the other brands out there. Just a few sentences, Lara.
Essentially, we prioritize real food ingredients rather than synthetic lab-based ingredients, because we know that real food can deliver the carbohydrates, the proteins, the electrolytes just as well, in a more palatable way, in an easier digested way than many of the more synthetic brands out there at the moment. And so we pride ourselves that our products are not only powerful, but they actually taste really good as well. So half of the battle in fueling is that you perhaps are feeling a bit sick. You perhaps have had the same raspberry flavored gel for the last 3 hours and you don't want to have another one. The Veloforte range offer a massive range of flavors and textures, and all with botanical ingredients to help calm down nausea and calm down inflammation. And so they are a really joy to fuel with, and we want you to feel that. We want you to look forward to when your watch goes buzz in that 20-minute window. What am I going to have now? Am I going to have a gel? Am I going to have a couple of energy chews? Am I going to have a bite of my energy bar? And each thing was a variety in taste and texture. And so it sort of makes it fun fueling rather than fear of fueling.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly so important on the really long distances, especially to those who've signed up to the Bastards. Like, you're going to be out there for probably 12 hours plus. So having fueling that you're looking forward to, I know flavor fatigue, even on a 4-hour ride, is a big factor for some people. And it is because loads of the brands out there, it's natural flavorings, it's synthetic sugars, and it's just the sweetness overload and the same texture, the same sort of flavors on repeats 30 minutes after half an hour. So it's just like being able to mix up those flavors, different textures from different products, different flavors from each of those is, really, really important. I like that there's a beetroot flavored gel, which is actually my favorite. On a hot summer's day, it cleanses the palate. It's, completely different to anything else out there on the market, which is really, really nice. I didn't know if you wanted to give a quick overview of the differences on a few of the products before we just answer any Q&As that people might have. I know, David, you've gone back, Jane, for that. I mean, probably the 3 or 4 main things people are most used to taking is obviously the energy bars. And I mean, if no one's tried the Veloforte ones before, they are very different to those out there on the market. They've got more great taste towards than any other energy bars out there. So I'm guessing they taste amazing. They also are high in carbs and perfect for performance. But I don't know if you want to give a quick overview on how they are slightly different, and what's the secret, I suppose, Lara.
I can't tell you the secret, otherwise I'd have to kill you, Tom, clearly. So the Veloforte energy bars are soft and chewy. So that's one of the major differences. They're not dry, they're not crumbly, they're not going to break apart in your pocket. They don't suck all the moisture out of your mouth. They're made with dried fruit and toasted nuts and specially selected spices to make them taste amazing, to make them easy to digest. The first part of your digestion is your saliva. So by making something that tastes delicious and you chewing is activating the first stage of digestion. So our energy bars are chewy. They don't feel too heavy in your stomach, but you know you've eaten something. So they're quite satisfying as well. Because if you're on the bike for 11, 12 hours and all you're taking on is gels and chews and liquids, your stomach is pretty empty. So having a little bit of solid food in there just will help to sort of settle it down as well. And so there's 6 different flavors to choose from chocolates to berries to gingers to mocha flavors. There's something for everybody. Like I said, they're soft and chewy. There's about 35 grams of natural carbs, dual source carbs in there from the dried fruits and the natural sugars and the honeys and the syrups within the blend, and about 5 grams of natural protein from the nuts as well. So they're fantastic endurance bars, and they are delightful to eat. And as Tom said, we've won 47 Great Taste Awards on these bars. So they are natural, powerful and delicious.
Yeah, no, I can definitely. Yeah, I think the next one as well is energy gels. I think they're probably worth mentioning. I think gels are the products most people have had bad experiences in the past, be that the texture, the taste, digestibility, and I think the last thing we want people doing is having gels and signing up to complete the bastards, but then as a result of taking a gel, being forced to choose shorter options. So yeah, I mean, the Veloforte ones again are very, very different to the others out there on the market, but I guess in how do they exactly differ?
Yeah, so the Veloforte gels, instead of being made with isolated sugars and refined starches, the majority of gels are made with maltodextrin, which is a refined starch. It's a high glucose material. It's got the highest glycemic index, higher than glucose itself. Maltodextrin, it's got like a glycemic index of 100, so it will spike your blood sugar like crazy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're working really hard, because you need that energy spike because that's what's feeding your muscles. But it's very easy to overdo it with maltodextrin because it's a very strong and very powerful source of carbohydrates. And so a lot of people find if they're just fueling with maltodextrin heavy gels, that they get the stomach cramps, the flooding, the diarrhea, and everything that you don't want when you're out on a trail ride for 7 hours. So the Veloforte gels don't use anything like that. We use natural plant-based syrups to deliver the glucose and the fructose that you need to keep your endurance going. So we use a blend of brown rice syrup, date syrup and maple syrup, and they're flavored just with fruit juices and again with botanicals. And they are really delicious. They're easy on your digestion. They're very natural. They've got a sodium load in them as well. We use pink Himalayan salt. So each gel is much smaller. I mean, you see this here. This is our Reba gel here, our blackcurrant gel. Much smaller in size than a standard gel, but the same amount of carbs, so they're easy to take, and there's less liquid, there's less volume to take. So this gel delivers 22 grams of carbohydrates and 110 milligrams of sodium. So like I said about making sure that you're replacing your sodium, particularly as an electrolyte, it's the biggest one you lose in your sweat. You can add electrolytes into your liquids, into your fluids, but you can also make sure that you're having them in your fuel as well. So all the Veloforte gels and chews, and we do electrolytes as well, obviously have a good sodium load from pink Himalayan salts. It's a very natural source of sodium. And so they're small and mighty, they taste great. And the difference with our gels, if you don't enjoy, lots of people have bad experiences with the gels. Either they don't like the texture, they don't like the taste, they just don't like the idea of taking something really neat. Because the Veloforte gels are made with plant-based syrups, you can actually dilute them in your water bottle as well. So you can dilute 3 or 4 of these gels in like a 500, 600 ml bottle, and that gives you a carb electrolyte solution. So that's a really great way to fuel if you don't, undoing a gel on a gravel ride, taking your hands off the handlebars, really quite tricky. So if you want to pre-make an electrolyte carbohydrate solution using our gels, so that's a really great way to fuel on the gravel ride. So there are our gels.
Yeah, I think for me as well, another tip is actually a hydration vest. So travel riding obviously can be quite bumpy, and you sort of want to minimize the amount of time you're taking your hands off the handlebars. So having a pair of shorts with cargo bib pockets can be a really good idea, because it's a lot easier to get your energy bars out and eat. And also a hydration vest can be nice because essentially you can put this straw in your mouth and hydrate on a descent, or just through a technical section you might not be able to use a normal bidon with. And it also means you're not going to have bottles falling out of your boss cages and you're going to have to turn around and go and fetch them from the roadside again. That's just something that I find quite useful. I think the last one for me is sort of electrolytes. I know Stone Circle, we talked about it earlier, it's been quite hot the last couple of years, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be the same this year. Obviously, there's sort of 2 main types of electrolytes. There's powder formats and then tablet forms, which I'm probably sure most people are aware of and may take one or the other. Is there sort of a preference, or is one better than the other, or tell us a little bit about that.
When it comes to fueling, it is down to personal preference. If you really like something, then please fuel with it. Don't feel like you have to, make a change in your fueling if something works for you. That's just by the by. Electrolytes, so common forms of the little tabs, the fizzy tabs, you pop them in your water and they're effervescent and they're fizzy, they make a fizzy electrolyte solution. Normally they're not hand in hand with carbohydrates, they're just a flavor and an electrolyte replacement. And then the powdered forms can either be just flavor and electrolytes, or they can be carbohydrates and electrolytes in there as well. So we make a range of them at Veloforte. We make a 3-in-1 electrolyte, which is our Activo here, which has got carbohydrates from natural sugars. It's made with freeze-dried fruit, so the color that you see is from the fruit. We don't add colors. The flavor is from the fruit. We don't add flavors. And the natural electrolytes, again, from pink Himalayan salt, that's sodium, and potassium from dried coconut water as well. So all super easy on your gut, non-inflammatory. And they're still, because we don't add effervescence, because they're powdered form, we don't need anything to make them break apart inside your water. So they don't fizz in your pack or in your bottle, and they don't fizz on your inside. So they're really, we say they're more like a fruit tea than a fizzy pop, and they're very gentle on your insides. So we do one with electrolytes, energy, and caffeine. And our caffeine source that we use throughout the range in our chews and our gels and in our hydration is guarana. So it's a natural caffeine. And in each of our caffeinated products, of which there are 1 or 2 in all of the ranges, we deliver 75 milligrams of natural caffeine, which is the same as a cup of coffee. We'll come on to when to use caffeine in a minute when we finish about electrolytes. And then our Paso electrolyte is a 2-in-1, so it's energy and electrolytes. So it's got 22 grams of carbs, and it's got the sodium and the potassium in there as well. And then we also just do a pure electrolyte one, so it's without the energy. So if you feel like you're on top of your carb intake and you only want to just replace your liquids and your electrolytes, then the Solo one is for you. And Solo is apricot and sage. Sage, you say? What an interesting ingredient for you to put in electrolytes. There's method in the madness. When you're fueling sweet on sweet for hours on end, you actually want something that is a bit more savory. So we add sage into our our solo, we add basil into our strawberry electrolyte here as well. So there's a little play on sweet and savory, which helps just refresh your taste buds and makes you want to reach for your bottle a little bit more often as well. So that's the electrolytes.
Yes, perfect. And then you touched upon caffeine. I mean, lots of us are probably cyclists, we're coffee drinkers, so we will like our caffeine. But cycling, especially if you're doing, I don't know, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours, however long the bastard takes, or, I mean, any of the routes, caffeine is going to probably be something people are going to be trying to utilize. But I'm assuming it's probably not best to be taking that in hour one. But yeah, I might be wrong. Do we want to?
I don't know. I think caffeine, or what do we most of us do? We wake up and we have a cup of coffee, don't we? Whether that's a perceived, that's waking me up, that's just a routine thing. But caffeine doesn't give you any more energy. That is a misconception. Caffeine, what it actually does, it sharpens your senses. It makes you concentrate easier, and it reduces the perception of exertion. So it makes everything feel easier. It doesn't actually give you energy. It's not like taking anything carbohydrate. It just makes everything feel a lot easier. So people often use caffeine before the start of a race to kind of give that pep up before you go. Mid-race is a great way if you're in those dark hours, hour 5, 6 on the bastard ride and your legs are killing you and you're losing motivation, then adding some caffeine in those hours is fantastic. The one thing I would say about all caffeine, and that's natural caffeine and also synthetic caffeine, is it does take about 45 minutes to properly get into your system. So if you are doing the shorter ride, you're doing the what's it called, the Jester ride, and you're within the last half an hour and you want to sprint for that finish, taking your caffeine gel within 20 minutes of the end finish line, you're going to be flying high on the podium rather than actually benefiting from the caffeine. So you just need to make sure that you're timing it well enough. So give yourself at least 45 minutes, an hour before you think you really need that extra kick from the caffeine.
Amazing. I think that sort of covers all of my fueling sort of questions. I mean, before we open up the Q&As, we have put together a specific Stone Circle training box. So all the products that we talked about today, so we've got the gels, the chews, the electrolytes, the protein shakes, and energy bars, as well as 2 bottles. We've sort of put that together as a way for you, if you'd like to try out the range. You also get 25% off with the code Stone Circle, so save a bit of money there. And then closer to the event itself, we are going to be creating 3 bespoke boxes, 1 for each distance. So there will be feed stations on each route, much to Duncan's question earlier. But those feed stations are very much there to help support you, and you shouldn't really be relying entirely on those. That's about right, isn't it? Probably, Charlie. Yeah, those are sort of nice top-ups if you need a top-up of water, electrolytes, a gel or something. But yeah, our recommendation is going into the rides with enough fuel to get to that finish, and then the feed stations are a nice added bonus. So
yeah. Exactly. Treat them as a value add. I think it really depends on how you're going in and how you're approaching the event, because there's 2 very different approaches, and one is that riding at pace. I mean, we make no secret of the fact, like, Stone Circle is not a race, and you ride it with your head up and you have a great day with your mates. However, there's nothing to say that you can't still treat it like a fast event that you are essentially testing yourself on. So with that in mind, as Tom said, there's nothing to, I suppose, really you need to be fueling yourself in a way which isn't reliant on those fuel stops, and you may not even want to be stopping at those stops for long periods of time. Likewise, though, if you're riding the event, I suppose, in your own time, perhaps with your mates, it's a full day out, especially if you're doing one of the longer routes as well. you may have the time to stop properly and fuel yourself at those stations, but they very much are, I guess, a value add and shouldn't really be used as sort of your main sources of nutrition, because there's points where, especially if you are riding slower, the time gap between getting to fuel stations, it's going to be too long to leave it in terms of carbs. And yeah, you don't want to be bonking like halfway through, because it's going to be a long day for you.
Yeah, and training with the carb source that you're hopefully going to be using is super important. So there's no surprises on event day at all. I mean, event day has its own stresses. You're not sleeping at home. You've had a night in the tent. You've eaten food that you might not have eaten the night before. So there's all these other dynamics going on. But when you're on the bike, you want to know that the fuel that you're packed in your bento box, in your leg bag, wherever you're stashing it, is something that you've tried and tested, and you know that it suits you.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that covers everything from my perspective. Unless you've got anything more to add, Lara. But I mean,
I'm open for questions. If anyone's got any questions, yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully.
I've definitely got one that kind of carries on from what we were just saying, guys. I mean, I hold my hands up. I unfortunately have been getting into running in the last year and a half. I've been turning to the dark side. But what's really interesting is, obviously, coming from a cycling background, you develop quite a good understanding of nutrition through training and racing, but it's something that's quite overlooked for runners. And so what's really interesting is, sort of seeing people discover things like gels and bars and fueling on longer runs for the first time, and people going like, oh my God, like I need to use this product in training. And it kind of ties in. This feels like a setup, but it's genuinely really interested. Ties in nicely to what you were just saying, Lara, in that with the Veloforte products or even any other products in general, should people, let's say you're not used to having gels in training, should people be using the gels in the weeks, months, in the run up to, is it a myth? Is it true that you do need to get your stomach accustomed to those things? And how does it work? Is it all a myth, or is it true?
No, it's absolutely true. So even practicing opening a gel when you're on the bike, or opening a pack of chews, or finding ways for you to decant before into easy, accessible, if you have a little Ziploc bag, so chopping up an energy bar into small bite-sized chunks or to thirds that is going to be all right for that 20-minute, your buzzer goes off, I'm going to take that because I know that's going to fit my carb target. Practicing opening gels or decanting them into your water bottles or your running hydration vests beforehand is all part of your training. You're not just training on the bike, you're training your insides, and really testing in anger how your body copes with the fuel in the volume that you're going to take it on the longer ride. So even in your shorter rides, you should still be practicing fueling. So, your body's got enough fuel in it to keep you going for 60 to 90 minutes, depending on your intensity. But if you're doing a 60-minute spin, try practice having a gel. Try practice having a few chews. What is it like eating while your legs are moving? And you shouldn't be surprising yourself on event day. So do absolutely practice. And we were talking about before about training your gut to take more than the recommended or the average carb intake. So 60 to 90 grams you will very well tolerate if you're making sure that you're not just taking all glucose at one time. But if you want to push hard on that, if you are going for, if you're an elite athlete, if you are going for, a PB, your best time, and you want to really push hard and you are looking to increase your carb intake. I know Tom, he doesn't stop at 60 grams an hour, do you, Tom?
No, so for me, just like for reference, for me, I find gels, like they work perfectly for racing. So bars and chews, like I really enjoy for training, but anything over above about zone 3 for gel sort of work better. And that's just through trial and error. I practiced that during training and actually taking 3 or 4 gels an hour, which is going back to that little and often points earlier, to hit, for me, around 80 to 90 grams of carbs. So that's my sort of sweet spot. But I've practiced taking slightly less, slightly more, and it's worked out actually. That's where I feel best, and that's what works for me. And it's a surprising difference between taking slightly too little, and then slightly too much. And yeah, just playing around and find what works for you. That would also be my advice. Yeah.
And the training of you takes weeks, so you don't just do this in the 4 or 5 days running up to the event. So if you want to be pushing your limits on carb intake, then do that over a month period. And as you said, Tom, it's trial and error. How does it feel? Am I tolerating well? Do I have any gastric side effects? How energized am I? What's my power outage? How is it really affecting me? The research is a bit too strong at the moment. One is saying that over time your carb channels become much more efficient, and the other one is saying over time you actually make new carb channels, so you may be able to actually push that 90 grams up to 100, up to 120 grams, but it takes time. So stay within your even limits with your 60 to 90 comfortably, using carbohydrate sources which have glucose and fructose, which is basically real food carbohydrates, and you should be great. You'll be fine.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, perfect, Steve. Great. Yeah, good training. 2 gels and a bar. That's good carbohydrate intake. Good. How's it feeling?
Yeah, it's okay, apart from when I get to about hour 5 and I just the power seems to just peter out, but I think it's just tiredness, to be honest.
Are you using any caffeine products in there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm using some of your smaller caffeine gels.
Great. Doppio or Desto, which is your favourite?
Oh, let me just check.
The coffee one or the cherry one?
Actually, it's the Tempo one.
Oh, lovely, great. So that's not got any caffeine, but
it's
lovely.
not. Yes, no.
Yeah, great. So I mean, you can try popping a few caffeines along the way to see if that helps, and making sure you're keeping on top of your hydration. Again, carbohydrate is one side of the equation, hydration is the other side of the equation. So a 5% drop in hydration is up to a 30% drop in mental and physical performance. So if you're not meeting your liquid requirements as well, that could be a reason why you're feeling fatigued.
Yeah,
I mean, are you doing those 5-hour rides on the turbo?
Yes, yeah, on the turbo. Yes, I'm one of those stupid idiots that prefer to do some of those long sessions because I can control the power output and everything. But yeah, I think unfortunately my biggest failing when it comes to fueling is definitely down to the liquid side. It's one of those things I remember to eat, but it's just I'm just sipping small amounts, and by the time I've finished, I look at the bottles and think, oh my God, I've only probably done about 3 liters in about 5 hours. And of course, I'm dripping wet. So that probably explains most of the tiredness at the end.
Average sweat is about 1 litre an hour average. Now, everyone sweats differently, and everyone sweats a different amount of sodium as well. So you'll know if you're a salty sweater because your kit has got white staining when you finished. So you can do many little tests that tells you how much liquid you're losing. So you can weigh yourself naked before your start. You can then calculate how much you've drunk during your session and weigh yourself naked at the end, and you'll know how much liquid you've lost or how much you haven't replaced. If you're lighter at the end, you haven't replaced enough fluid, so you'll know how much you're falling short. So that's a really easy way for you to test that at home. And then if you are a salty sweater, not that I'm oversharing about you, Tom, but Tom's a very salty sweater. And if you know that, then you're trying to keep up with your electrolyte replacements with that as well.
Thank you.
Kate. That's all right. Kate, I don't find water hydrating. Would you advise the solo into the bottles rather than just plain water? Veloforte gels already but haven't yet tried the gels and drink. So you may not feel that water is hydrating you, but it absolutely is hydrating you. It might not be quenching your thirst, but absolutely water is what your body is losing in the majority. Taking on electrolytes helps you to keep water inside your body, inside your fluid. It stops you from peeing it straight out. So adding electrolytes into your water will help you to retain some more of that water, which is what you need if you're exercising hard. You need water in your system. So yes, adding Solo into the bottles might help that. And also, yeah, do try the gels in the water bottles. It's a fantastic trick. So if you put 3 gels inside of a 500 ml water bottle, that's 66 grams of carbs and 330 mils of sodium right there. So you're almost on your lower level carb target if you drink your 500 mils of water. So you're hydrating, you're energizing, and you are topping up your sodium. If you're a salty sweater, you will need perhaps more than the 330 mils of sodium. So you perhaps need to have either another electrolyte drink as well, or you can take salt tabs if you don't want to take on more fluids.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much from personal experience, but I got a sweat monitor last year because, again, I was sort of struggling, similar to you, Kate. I was just drinking more and more water and actually wasn't feeling as hydrated. And it turned out I was drinking too much water. So I was just diluting my body of electrolytes. And when I had this sweat monitor, I found actually I needed to decrease the amount of volume of water that I was drinking, but increase the volume of electrolytes. And sort of changing that placement actually really helped with my hydration levels. And then as a consequence, the performance on the bike. So yeah, I now use a bottle of electrolytes and a bottle of water on all my rides pretty much. And that's been, pretty much game changing for me.
Yeah, and Tom, overhydrating without adding electrolytes, there is a danger to that as well, because obviously you're sweating, you're losing sodium. If you're just chucking volumes and volumes of water in, you become hyponatremic, which means your overall sodium levels are really low, and that can cause seizures, and the worst thing, but it can cause sort of confusion, bad temper, like we all get at the end of a long ride. But yeah, it can be quite actually dangerous for you. So when you are on the long rides, you must be addressing your hydration and including electrolytes. You get electrolytes in your food that you're eating. So like in the food stations, Charlie, there'll be real food there as well as energy products. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we pride ourselves on having like proper food there. It was quite I suppose on that. It was quite popular last year. We just had like cut up potato, like salted potatoes, and so you get low. Yeah, exactly. Like it's real food. You're getting sodium in. It's just, and also because, as you said, flavor fatigue with you're just caning sweet stuff, to have something a little bit salty to balance it out. It's fantastic. But we're hoping to. We had some really good feedback, and it was very, very positive, and everyone raved about the food last year. So we're hoping to continue that and build on it.
Brilliant.
And then to answer your question, Kate, it's Flow Bio, the sensor I use. So I'll put it in the chat, actually. That'd be easier, wouldn't it? And that connects to the Veloforte range. So effectively, that attaches to your heart rate monitor and then measures how much sweat you're losing and how much liquid you're losing through sweat as well. And then at the end of the ride, gives you sort of a report. And then you can add into that the Veloforte products that you took, and it basically gives you, did you take enough? Did you take too much, too little? And then it really helps, you for the future, which I'd recommend. So,
anyone else?
So I would definitely say, go online, order your training pack, test it in anger, see which flavors you like the best, and have fun.